Welcome to another gathering of Riverbed Poetry. Thank you for all being here. The gift to everybody is a clipboard.
Nice.
And a pen.
Unless you
If you don't have to take it, but if you want it. I don't know if we give you a pen or not, but they're coming around. So
I had one and I don't know what it is, but I'll give it back tonight since I have one.
I kind of thought that if people are old school with poetry, you don't really have a desk here, so having a clipboard might serve.
I'm also down with
Awesome.
it. Digital.
And this is Luna Wolf, our mascot. Thank you. And so we're new at this. I don't know how many people are going to come, how often, how long we'll keep it going, but it's my belief that the poetic mind is a different operating system than the mundane mind, and it may share some qualities with the sacred mind, but I think it's an important aspect of ourselves to keep awake, invigorated, access to, share, and so I imagine that this group can become a practice of criticism, a practice of reading, a practice of performing, a practice of hearing, but any of those are kind of bringing the mind into that poetic space. So what the space becomes, I don't know if it even lasts. But I have a bunch of stuff prepared so that if people aren't coming with their own offerings and questions and so on and so forth, we have plenty to do. And among those is a few different ideas for kind of participatory practice. So I'm gonna just start by reading a poem on our theme, which is grief tonight. And so this one's a translation by Red Pine of a poem called from Wei Ting Wu in a volume called In Such Hard Times. And this particular poem is called Returning Home After a Trip. This references the loss of the poet's wife. Returning home after a trip. In the past, I was glad to come home, but to sadness I now return. Entering our closed, sunless room, I stifle my grief and write the epitaph. I lift the dark curtain in pain, startled by a cold, desolate breeze. Our younger daughter doesn't realize she still comes into the courtyard to play. I sigh every day, feeling older, dazed by the transience of life. My relatives urge me to eat. At the table, my tears fall in vain.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What makes that poetry rather than prose?
You're looking for an answer from me?
Or an opinion from anybody?
So the first offense is that it appears in a book of poetry. I was listening at the moment, I don't recall the author's name, but was being interviewed by Alan Alda, and Alan asked him something like that, like what makes that poetry? And indeed, I think that something that some group or person considers prose, another can just as validly consider poetry. But his simple answer was that a poem doesn't respect the margins of the page. That was his answer, in his words, I'm paraphrasing. But if we're writing prose, right, we write until we find the margin, and then we go to another line. But a poet writes until the, let's say, expression is complete. It doesn't fill the line, right? I just thought it was an interesting, it felt to me like somebody talking about coloring outside the lines, like that kind of a, hint about what's going on.
Can I add?
Please, yeah.
For me, it seems that there's this like weighted intentionality with the words in poetry. And sometimes even in prose, the author could, or the writer, the poet could still be using that weighted intentionality along with a rhythm that feels like poetry, even though it's paragraphs and a narrative. Like one of my favorite authors is both. Like she writes prose and poetry, and her prose to me is poetry because of that intentionality.
Yeah, I enjoy reading some journalists who I see that way. Where it's clearly a prose problem that they're solving. They're handing something into the editor on some topic with however many words. But I always kind of feel like, oh boy, you're just a poet trapped in this job, and where you can, or maybe not even on purpose, but the poetry is coming to the surface. And I enjoy that kind of additional read on the thing. But I often think that, poetry chooses rhythms and imagery and words that are, and punctuation that is like not the simplest choice that serves the job of the text, but it serves other functions, right? Like such as I suggested with the lyric mind, but I think anybody of us would be hard pressed to clearly define poetry, defining any.
I remember. That just sparked a thought from ninth grade, reading, a Norton anthology or something, and one of the introductions was a definition of poetry by one of the Romantics, maybe Shelley, or Wordsworth or something like that. Emotion recollected in tranquility was the phrase that, and that's a quote. I remember that for 40, 50 years or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't pop up too often in my life, but
yeah, I think if you're trying to define art, you have a bunch of argument and dissatisfaction, and also a bunch of certainty about how people have defined it. They're going to be certain, and their followers are. But I think you could also have something that nobody made, that there are some people that consider that art, right? Or that somebody made without any intention of art, In the same way, I think, if you bring a poetic mind to something, you could be considering something that is to be poetry that nobody else had. So, we could say, rather than what is poetry, is what is the poetic receiving mind, And so maybe you could consciously offer that purposefully to something that isn't previously understood to be poetry, and thus see the poetry in it. It could be an interesting practice too,
Do you post these?
Post what?
The video list, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then, if people want to join by Zoom, then they can Zoom in and receive it too.
Just wondering, because it's easier to watch it later and then take notes then, or?
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, thanks.
Well, that's a good point, because it is a little distracting, and I also know some other people who would like to join. Since I won't be here next week, I'll definitely join.
Yeah.
It's already interesting. Okay.
So, so let's just think about grief. I'll just kind of go around the room if anybody has any first thoughts, brief, that you want to, on the topic of grief, something that you want to say, or perhaps offer kind of a furtive definition of it, or what comes to mind. What are our thoughts about grief? What's a lesson about grief? What's a thought about grief?
I'm struggling now with grief because I've experienced it in the past, but for the last 10 years or so, I've not been experiencing grief in an emotional way that I would expect to. And I don't know how to unrepress that. I don't feel I'm repressing. I'm not afraid, so I'm not sure what that is. So my experience with grief right now is a challenge of wanting to appreciate it more or experience it again. And that sounds strange, but when you grieve for somebody, you're re-experiencing the feelings of love, I think. Thinking about those times and the feeling that you had from that person or with that person. And there can be a long period where that happens, and then it always goes on. But right now, I'm just not having that experience. People are leaving my life, and it just seems more like, I don't know. Something, but it feels like I said, I'm checking the repression part. I don't feel it.
I don't think I've ever felt grief in my life.
How do you feel about that?
It's something I think I probably am shying away from considerably, with some effort. Talk about repression. I suspect that I have repressed it.
Yeah, so you've definitely had experiences that normally somebody would expect to be followed by some grief, but not having had experience that, maybe that's suggesting that you had the opportunity to have grief, but repressed it, chose not to have it, distracted yourself away from it, whatever the mechanisms were. And I would suspect at your age that there's a pattern there.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
if it
and then
were
there's a cause behind that pattern.
On the topic of repression, with what you just said, I've come to realize that I've developed this ability to just block out things that I don't want to deal with, and so maybe there's some relation there, or like once you kind of learn to do this thing, it becomes more common to respond that way. But like when I heard grief, like the first things that come to mind for me are loss and regret, tied together, obviously.
Anything, Sarah?
Yeah. I feel like grief is another word for other emotions, like a lot of like sadness and all the things that have, the feelings.
Like it's a basket that holds a bunch of emotions. And maybe Harry doesn't have some of these, and you have too many of those, and or
like,
different things in your fruit basket.
Felt,
but
right.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's not labeled as grief all of the time, and it's just interesting. Like my most recent encounter with grieving it has to do with just this health thing I'm going through, and several people that I've shared with, told them about what I'm going through, have used the term grieving. You must be grieving, and for me that wasn't a word
doesn't
that
feel
I
like
was,
a fit.
right. But it can be, and I'm curious about it, and maybe that will be helpful in my healing journey or just processing journey. So that's just returning, like circling back to what I was thinking about, like there can be other emotions that I'm feeling, and grief could be like the umbrella word for that, or the top of the basket, the handle of the basket, for all the other feelings like sadness and fear and curiosity and confusion, you know. So those are my current thoughts.
Has everybody had a chance to go? Is it up to me now, or did I skip somebody? I didn't want to leave anybody out on that introductory before I do a teaching on it.
We will.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know if I skipped on that. I didn't want to do that. So the first thing I would say is that I think for whatever reason, when we first hear the word grief, I say we, meaning us in this culture, so far as I've been exposed, might not be universal. We kind of think of it as wailing and moaning and something like depressed and a lot of crying. So we think of it as fairly loud or acute or depressive or something, like very dark. And I would say that what is true is that there will be loss.
Say that again.
What is true is that there will be loss. Unavoidable. And I would say is that what is also true is that we must reckon with that loss. Some people reckon with it by going to the whiskey. Some people reckon with it by picking up a new hobby or getting a new girlfriend or, having an addiction or crying and being depressed or seeing a therapist or getting back to work or getting back on the, get back on the horse. Kind of right. Put all kinds of different ways, and I'm simplifying, but a lot of people will do a few things, right? And if we look at the things in the basket, some people are missing what other people are having. Other people have a lot of the thing that you have a little bit of. But we all have this basket called grief, which is reckoning with loss. And the grief is not always crying and depressed and gloomy or whatever. It might look like something else. Now, we could also then judge some of that stuff and say, well, that's not a healthy way of grieving, that starting out eating a hot foot sundae for breakfast every day or whatever it might be. And let's get you some help and talk to somebody and, that sort of a thing. And we might say, like, such as Harry suggested, well, maybe your reckoning with loss was not like a healthy set of functions or practices, like something was missing, right? So it wasn't balanced, but it was still your grieving. It just didn't look like the thing that you're busy calling grieving, so you think you didn't grieve, but you did reckon with it. Now we could say, well, was it healthy? Or perhaps could it have been healthier? And maybe when we consider the healthy, it's not just for you. So the measure is not just, did you get through it, stoically or something? Was it healthy for those around you? Was it healthy for your career? Was it healthy for, your friends and neighbors or whatever? Was it healthy for your art, right? So we can look at it that way. But I would say that unless our loss is followed by the loss of ourselves, right? In other words, there is no one to grieve. You are going to reckon with your loss. And it might be exaggerated. It might be very, gesticulating and loud and so forth. And it might be very long. It might be very lonely and quiet and sort of largely unknown to other people. It might be public. It might be private. It might be all kinds of ways. But I think you're going to inescapably reckon with it. And I think the question then is the reckoning healthy? Is it, let's call it balanced? Right. And to put this another way, grief is a fundamental element of life, almost, because it is possible, you're stillborn or something, and there is no chance for you to have grieved anything else, I suppose. But simply speaking, we're all going to experience loss, and we're all going to reckon with it. And then I think the next questions are, like, how healthy is that reckoning? Now, if we're all going to experience loss and we're all going to reckon with it, and there is the possibility of it not being so healthy, and it's possible that it's tragic, and it's possible that it's reasonably healthy, but you could still do better, given all that. It sounds to me like something that should be practiced. But saying practice to at least two people here that probably suggested, well, are you kidding me? I'm reflexively avoiding it. Like, that's a big challenge. Like, why would I want to practice? Oof. But hey, it's something that's going to happen in life. Why don't you practice it, right? The number of people that I've counseled over the years around building an altar once they come to me with the current issue of grief is high. And the number of those people that I have suggested building an altar prior to the moment of the onset of grief is also high. And the number of those people that took on the challenge of getting good at doing that thing because you're going to want it later is very low. People say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be in that space. And I'm not saying be only and wholly into that space, have the rest of your life and go see a comedy movie and so. Which, of course, that could be a way of processing grief too, is seeing comedy, but I've experienced being very highly unmotivated to do that or averse to that, rather than saying, this is what's going to be happening in my life. I'd rather be a little good at it. Maybe you're not an expert or anything, but get a little bit good at it. And I think that's a healthy approach to most of the things that we can reasonably expect to be part of us. And in the practicing of grief, right? Like, you're going to be practiced in that space, maybe if we can call it that experience. And when you next meet grief, it might not be your own. But here I have been practicing it. I was thinking of for myself when I lose something or whatever. But, it's my best friend who lost whatever, their job, right? And I would say, as with most things, if you can practice that grief with small, low-stakes things more frequently, it's less charged, it's easier to manage. The downfalls, the stakes are lower if you mess it up, and you will because you're working on a thing. But, when you have some leftover tuna fish, and when you finally get to it in the fridge and you realize you got to throw it out, and it was $3 down the drain, practice your grief. Grief is not the word you would use, or most anybody, about throwing away a little tuna fish. I get it. But how is that different? It's the same practice as your firstborn dying in your arms. It's obviously much less charged and the stakes are lower and all the rest, but there's that little, you would probably say something like twinge or noticing of loss, but like right there you can practice. By the way, an example that comes to mind is, a funeral is where we kind of think of grief as first flowering. But I would recommend that you look into what a funeral in New Orleans is like. Because it will open your eyes to what grief can look like. It will expand your view. Because you will otherwise very likely have a quite narrow view of what grief looks like. And you're seeing a really polar, distinct polar difference of an experience of grief when you watch a New Orleans funeral.
And how does it compare, for example, to an Irish wake?
No, I think it's similar, but I think it's more public. It's literally a giant musical parade through the streets, loud. But I think there's drinking and song, like probably at an Irish wake. So,
The candles were super cool.
So, what we're going to do is offer a line and pass it around, and in a fairly short amount of time, we're each going to add about a line. But it could be a word, it could be a punctuation, it could be a couple words, a phrase, it could be a longer line. But we're not going to invest a lot of time. We're just going to kind of read and then add and pass it around until one of us at some point will just say, I don't know, that feels like it's it. And then we'll just say so, or I don't know, turn it over or put it at the end or whatever
And is
feels
it in
appropriate.
relationship to the other people?
We're just building a poem as a group.
Okay. So,
And I didn't say we're building a great poem or a good one. So if you feel that sensation in yourself, just know that you added it, not me.
I was actually gonna say, like, normally in this type of situation, I'd already be freaking out right now, like, getting some anxiety, but I know
Yep.
everybody here.
Great, I'm glad you can feel that. The idea is we're just trying to offer to the practice of a shared expression, but we don't have this greater idea that it's supposed to be anything or anything good or meet a theme or anything. I just wrote a few words without overthinking them. And, you know, the line that you write could argue with the previous lines. It can extend them. It could go in a new direction. It could be a repeat of what came before. And the idea is just
Doesn't have to
to...
rhyme either.
Doesn't have to rhyme. Well, it doesn't
Mine
have to rhyme.
happens
It has to be an
sometimes, I
iambic
say.
pentameter. I
Thanks,
know
I
that. but-
appreciate that. I was feeling pressure.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
It was a good one.
That's a good thing to add, Sarah, because I didn't think of it. But the idea is, you know, we are 5 individuals. But through this process, we are a poet.
The whole thing?
Oh, I think that
Yeah, I forgot. Sorry. Passing your whole notebook around.
It's her diary. You know? It's like, dear diary, I have to go to this stupid poetry group.
I want my fine point Sharpie back. I'm sorry. You guys know I try to be generous, but there's some things you just can't give up.
I don't blame you. People always walk off with pens and stuff. It's so common to do with the stuff I have done.
Oh, but I got it for you. Oh, and it's ooh. Oh, okay. Never mind. You can have that pen. Easy and screen. Oh, that's sweet.
Is that a quilt?
You guys check this out. Well, it has a quill, but it's a new way of doing it. The ink is fed
Oh, that's interesting.
continuously. So there's a name for that. Cool. See, I love what you said about practice because the grief that you experience next may not be, or
May not be your own.
may not be your own that you're practicing for. I mean, that's a hard way to say.
Right. Sometimes, you know, in the kind of practices that we do, we're working on letting go, right? In all these different ways in the various practices many of us participate in. So if you're getting even a tiny bit good at it, or maybe even if you're not, you're constantly having the opportunity to practice grief. Thank you, sir. It says through the silence. My mind hears. My mind hears. Okay, I just wasn't sure what to write.
I guess you have to learn to write.
No, that's fine. I didn't want to respond to what wasn't written.
This is really cool. It's a different experience. You should come. It's a whole different experience.
I guess we're passing the pen around. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
maybe I see yours here. Oh, thanks.
As soon as it left me, I thought of the next.
Oh yeah, that's so good. You should have like jumped up and sat on a different cushion, like so it gets passed to you. Yeah. And then if one of us kind of feels like, okay, that feels like an end for whatever reason, we'll just say it's the end. Nice to have a group here. Just let your subconscious express itself.
cross something out?
Why not? Yeah, why not? I was thinking to keep things moving along, one way to do this is we all start with a piece of paper, write a line, and then we all...
Ooh, that could be fun.
It's jammed up at one person.
And hopefully, one person
Yeah.
with writer's cramp doesn't have like a pile of poems.
I don't even want to add to this. I
Yeah.
feel like that's a good end.
Yeah,
If somebody wants to
yeah, that's
read it,
great.
disagree
No,
or
if that's the end, that's the end. Yeah, however you want. I'll,
Thank you.
does one, so you want to read it aloud so then we can all hear it together?
Okay.
Is that all right?
Okay.
You in the flight? You good?
I think so.
Great.
Through such blades my eyes listen, the tears glisten, and we ask, why are we here? Through the silence my mind hears, through the question my heart nears. Prisms of light, no fear or of flight, with wings we go just where we want to go. Actually, it's not bad at all, guys.
Yay! Well done. That was really fun. I'm gonna read an acrostic that I wrote the other day. An acrostic poem is you take a word or a phrase or something. So in my case, the word is grief, and the word grief has 5 letters, G-R-I-E-F, and so it's a 5-line poem. The first line starts with G, the second line starts with R, and so on. So the topic can be anything, but probably grief is what's on the mind. That's going to look like the title of the poem. So this is what I wrote probably in 15 seconds. Just didn't give myself a chance. Just I see the R and I start writing and see what it does, and then on to the next line. Gone you are, gone we all shall be. Resurrection, reincarnation, our hopes I set down now to rest with all at rest. Every lifetime an extended funeral, a lifetime's ceremony of life. So that was grief, and what I would encourage you guys to do is for each session we're going to have a probably one word theme, and so consider writing an acrostic for each session, which I've done all along for each of these, just as a prompt and exercise. I like to do it with not letting myself overwork it or overthink it, but really just like see the word and just start writing. And even if it's a weird first word I write, I write dry cleaners because it's a D. All right, dry cleaners, and just see where it goes. But you could also try and get a rhyme scheme and a rhythm and like really think it out, and that's fine too if that's your thing. I rather like to do them just as there's the word, start writing, and then all right, that was terrible, fine, I wasn't trying to write anything good, I was just trying to exercise that part of myself. And it might very well not be something memorable, but I might end up with a little bit that I like that I'll actually use in a poem I really want to write, and that's fine too. So I think often we'll get hamstrung with it has to rhyme or it has to be good or it has to. No, I just want to be in this way of being, this way of thinking.
I missed the very first part where you said how you're picking the word. Is there a rhyme or reason to that?
For an acrostic?
Yes.
No, you could just
Any
see a word, candle,
okay,
let's
okay,
write one,
Okay.
I
thought we might have missed something.
Yeah. So I just have a theme for this every week, so that's the word that I'm using.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to take time away to do it, but here's a few that I wrote, so I'll leave them there when we're not doing something as a group, as we're leaving or something, if anybody wants to read any. I want to do a reading of a poem now off the topic, and then we'll probably come back to topic, unless anybody has one that they're ready to read or would like to read.
About grief.
I was thinking off topic, but if you want to stay on topic, that's fine too.
I found a few about grief, but I can wait.
Okay.
I have one about grief.
Okay, so we'll try and get to that as we go. But one of the things I was thinking is like if I have a theme, especially if it's a heavy theme, I don't want to just dwell on it. I want to kind of just, oh, here's just a poem I read. Like have a space for that, you know. So here's a short one by Marwan Makouz. In order for me to write poetry that isn't political, I must listen to the birds. And in order to hear the birds, the warplanes must be silent.
Sounds like something from the Dow.
Right.
I like that one quite a bit.
The cows in the
So the next thing I'd like to do is invite each of you to offer a word or phrase, if you like. I'm just sorry. I'm paused to look for my spot to write it down. I'm gonna just go to the notebook here. If you have a word or phrase that may elicit poetry.
Rooting.
Rooting.
Yes.
Harry?
First word that comes to my mind, senescence.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even sure what it means.
Right, yeah, tell us.
It's like somnolescence. I always like that word. You know? Darcy?
Eclipse.
Ooh, nice.
There's one coming.
Oh, yeah?
A month from now.
Mr. John?
Family.
Family? Good. Is that everybody? 1, 2, yeah. So you did senescence, right? Like decay. Kind of.
Deterioration
Yeah,
of age.
yeah, there you go. Yeah. Good.
Did you go?
That's the one
Sound
why
like
that
something
came
like
up.
that.
Were you the first one to go, sir?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Rooting.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody did one, yeah.
You said brooding or breathing?
Rooting, like
Rooting.
branches.
Rooting, yeah.
Roots. Yeah.
Rooting, like Tai Chi.
R-O-O-T.
Rooting.
Routine.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, go.
Yeah, but you said like branches, but you know, in the second of these gatherings, that was your word.
Well, I was thinking
Branches,
bleach.
branches
Yeah, I
was her.
know,
Yeah,
right.
pleach is such a great. Isn't that?
I'm never gonna
I'll give you
forget
another one besides pleach. Inosculation.
Inosculation?
Yeah, inosculation.
That means kissing the branches.
Kind of. Yeah.
Kissing something, I suppose.
Yeah, but that's a nice one with pleaching and osculation. But the idea is just a very simple offer a word or phrase, and you might have wanted to write about it, or maybe you did, but maybe just hearing that cool word or phrase or whatever like gets John thinking, or then you read a poem about it or write or whatever. It's really just to fertilize. And it might be something we all use or nobody uses, but it's just to, you know, hopefully, you know, we don't choose super ordinary words, but something that has a little bit of poetic magic to it.
Is that the intended, what emphasis, what did you say? The earlier first
Weighted intentionality.
weighted intentionality. It's something that you make special, in effect, or you're thinking this has got weight to it, this has got import, rather than, you know,
Like
hear
1,000
Jane,
words
see
just to
Jane
say,
run,
like,
you know,
yeah.
whatever.
So next, I just want to give anybody a chance who wants to read anything of their own.
Do you have any?
That's okay. I just want to create the space for that, you know.
I'll say a simple poem that I believe is my first poem.
Whoa, cool.
Okay, so the leaves in the wind, they seem to be free, but they must go where the wind blows. Nothing like me.
Wow. Is it the leaves and the wind, or the leaves in the wind? The leaves in the wind seem to be free, right?
The leaves, you're 100% right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The
The leaves
that's
in
why
the
it's nice to talk
Seem
about
to
it.
be free. That was pretty. You want to say it again? Let us kind of live in it.
The leaves in the wind seem to be free, but they must go where the wind blows. Nothing like me. Remember, this would have been like 1971 or 2. Peace, freedom, and freedom was a big topic of concern in my youth.
That's pretty awesome. That's really well done. Thank you for sharing that.
Space is there.
So I'll read a couple here. This is called Speaking Sadness to Soil. Every night, I whisper to the fur beneath the earth and listen through grief under defiant, silent stars. Hearing nothing, feeling everything, my body breaks as though to befriend my heart. I bend painfully over and let my spirit spill into the green growing soil where I dug an ache of a hole. This is a short one without a title. I cried myself to not sleep again. He's gone. This is from a series I wrote called Replyless. So let's, I forgot where we were on this. We already did the teaching part. People have some grief poetry to read that's not their own. So I'll throw it up into that, and I have some to read too if we like, but it doesn't have to be all me.
I have one I'd like to recite. It's one of my favorite poems, and it's Alexander Pope, A. Pope, and I just froze on it.
That's okay. We can come back to it if you want a minute. No worries.
I think I do need, that was too fast.
Yeah, that's no worries at all.
It's just not gonna roll. Oh, I can do it. There it is. There it is. Okay. It's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And I think that the reason this is about grief is it's a profound question if you read it that way. It can also be read as more of a statement. So I'm going to say it as a question. And I can see this as a person grieving and asking this question. How happy is the empty vessel's lot? The world forgetting by the world forgot. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, all wishes granted, all hope resigned.
What was the last
I
one?
could probably do a
Resigned.
little bit of cadence.
Yeah, great.
Okay, it's short, so. How happy is the empty vessel's lot, the world forgetting by the world forgot. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, all wishes granted, all hope resigned.
So great to hear. Thank you so
I
much.
never even knew that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I didn't even know where that was from. Did you ever hear of the movie called that?
Yes,
I forget
yes.
who the actors and actresses were.
I've
That's the only
seen,
reference
I've seen
ever
it,
heard of that.
and it was a bare reference to the poem, but yeah.
That's really good. I'll read one.
All right, thank you.
A Daughter of Eve by Christina Rossetti. A fool I was to sleep at noon and wake when night is chilly beneath the comfortless cold moon. A fool to pluck my rose too soon, a fool to snap my lily. My garden plot I have not kept, faded and all forsaken, I weep as I have never wept. Oh, it was summer when I slept, it's winter now I waken. Talk what you please of future spring and sun-warmed sweet tomorrow, stripped bare of hope and everything, no more to laugh, no more to sing, I sit alone with sorrow.
And who is that, Sue?
Christina Rossetti.
The cold, comfortless moon.
Wow. You know, Steve, how do you, I don't know, I mean, I always feel like I have to hear something twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you, like, that's,
Wow.
it's by the, you get to the end and it's just, it's so rich.
I often feel the same way. I just want to, now I kind of have an idea what it is now. I just want to really feel it and cling on certain words and stuff. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Can I send it to you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
or read it again. I don't know.
Well, I know we all have other
Yeah,
things
okay,
to
sorry.
I have an Emily Dickinson one, but it's kind of long, so I'm just gonna read the first 2 or 3.
Cool.
I measure every grief I meet with narrow probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has an easier size. I wonder if they bore it long or did it just begin. I could not tell the date of mine, it feels so old the pain. I wonder if it hurts to live and if they have to try, and whether could they choose between it would not be to die. I'm just gonna stop there because it's like 3 or 4 times as long as that.
Right. I think that's reasonable.
If they could choose between it would not be to die. Did you say
You have a
that?
good memory. And if they have to try, and whether they could choose between it would not be to die. I think that's what he said, yeah.
I'll read one by Matsuo Basha.
Go.
It's a haiku. Deep silence. The sound of the cicadas sinks into the rocks. When you think about that in light of it being about a loss, I think it's quite powerful. This is by Thich Nhat Hanh. I hold my face in my 2 hands. No, I am not crying. I hold my face in my 2 hands to keep the loneliness warm. 2 hands protecting. 2 hands nourishing. 2 hands preventing my soul from leaving me in anger. And you gotta just look at Edvard Munch and then read that.
Yeah. Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
Anybody else about to read? I'll read. I got a bunch of them here, so
2 more,
keep us
but
going.
Harry, did you want to?
Yeah, I just don't want to.
Okay, I'll read another one. It's titled "Grief" and it's by Barbara Crooker. Grief is a river you wade in until you get to the other side. But I am here, stuck in the middle, water parting around my ankles, moving downstream over the flat rocks. I'm not able to lift a foot, move on. Instead, I'm going to stay here in the shallows with my sorrow, nurture it like a cranky baby, rock it in my arms. I don't want it to grow up, go to school, get married. It's mine. Yes, the October sunlight wraps me in its yellow shawl, and the air is sweet as a golden tokay. On the other side, there are apples, grapes, walnuts, and the rocks are warm from the sun. But I'm going to stand here, growing colder, until every inch of my skin is numb. It can't cross over. Then you really will be gone.
That is spectacular. Wow. Woo. Thank you. This is Rumi. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor.
Oh, it's so good. I'd love to get that. Oh, wow.
I try and post the ones that I have and remember in the notes and Patreon so people can read them, but I'm not necessarily going to be comprehensive. But I try.
Okay, it's corny, but just because a wonderful poem. Actually, better take a minute. Never mind. I'm doing it too fast.
Was Harry finding one or not? Or I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just, okay, yeah. I thought maybe you had something you wanted to read. I'll offer another short one here, or two. He left me to my grief. Another one without a title. I'm standing naked over his grave. Naked as never before. This is unknown author, anonymous, I suppose. It's called Do Not Weep. You guys have probably heard this one before. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
And Steve, who is
That
it?
will make
I just heard it recently. You might have read it recently, but I don't know the author.
Author unknown.
Oh, anonymous, that's why.
So you do know the author.
Okay. I would like to recite just 5 or 6 verses of a very well-known poem about grieving
Cool.
by Edgar Allan Poe. This is The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, from some and forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping on my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each dying separate ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I sought the morrow, vainly as I sought to borrow from my books, suppressed with sorrow for the lost Lenore, the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And that poem goes on about 5 times that length. Maybe a little more than that.
Thank you.
The rare invasion.
Suddenly there comes a tapping.
Suddenly there comes a tapping.
Think about wrapping up here. We'll read a couple short ones here. This is called Change of Address by Donald Dempsey. You didn't die. You just changed shape, became invisible to the naked eye, became this grief. Its sharpness more real than your presence was before you were separate to me, entire to yourself. Now you are a part of me. You are inside myself. I call you by your new name, grief. Grief, although I still call you love. This is by Dina Televitskaya. It's called Smile. It has flown to me, and it has given me grief. It was your sad smile. Attributed to Bodhidharma. The greatest gift to others is to freely relinquish yourself. And then the last one, it says, I've got the chasing after the world brings chaos. Allowing it all to come to me brings peace. Just to invite us to sit in meditation for a couple moments. Okay, just welcome you back. Next week, the theme is myth. That may be a tough acrostic. I don't know.
How could it be tough?
What's that?
4 words.
Yeah. I did, we didn't get to it, but I did bring this. I thought we might spend a little time with helping or criticism. So I'll give it to you guys. You can do on your own if you want. And if you want to bring it next time, whether you're on Zoom or not, or ignore it. This is just a poem I wrote that I thought I was done, and then I had some thoughts about a title, but I didn't commit to them. And then I had some thoughts, particularly about the last stanza, about whether it was how I would leave it, or I would add words, or rewrite the last stanza, or delete the last stanza. So if anybody has, not now because we're going to finish this up, but suggestions, takes on it, now you have that broken partial
So
from me.
did you get one?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
yeah.
I was thinking we might do it as a little sort of exercise while we're here, but I didn't have the.
Did anybody see my clipboard?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think I have it here.